Somebody wrote me and said, KI is clearly one of the most powerful modalities I've ever experienced. And then the next sentence, they said, why do I sit around my house and not do it? That's all they said. Uh, well, I'll tell you this. It's not for the reasons that your mind tells you. So when your mind is saying, I want to inquire, I want to use KI, but I just have so much going on right now. I'm just really busy and this, that, and the other. Forget it. You all think about it. The suffering is infused in all of your life, all of your relationships. If you have a health condition, you're carrying around these symptoms every day of it. So the trauma and repression has its hands in everything, in the politics that you're watching on TV. Every single place that you turn, trauma and repression is involved in it. The suffering is everywhere in your life. And so if you think about it, you never say like, okay, I'm just going to take a break from my suffering here. I don't have time for it. Of course, we don't control the suffering. So it's not like you can turn it on and off, but at least you know that your suffering doesn't take a break. Like you might feel better sometimes than other times, but if you have something that's unresolved, it's there and it's always there. It's not like it just, again, takes a break. So also repression, we're constantly holding ourselves back. That doesn't take a break. So our suffering is going on constantly, but and then our mind says, this modality that might help me with that suffering, I just don't have time for it. I have other things I have to do. I don't know what to say about that. I can't relate to it. I can't relate to it because it wasn't my path. My path was always like, well, this is the answer. Obviously, to be awake to my experience is the answer. And to embody that awakeness is the answer. It's a life in so many ways, because that's the suffering, is being unconscious. So I've made that a really high priority in my life. As I've said before, like eating, sleeping, and right up there with it is recognizing my true nature throughout the day, stopping and just recognizing how everything is coming and going to present. Repeatedly stopping and recognizing that. In other words, bring that practice or recognition in a higher priority than so many other things, or to do it while I'm doing those things, because freedom and healing were such a high priority for me. And they probably are for you too. But then your mind comes in and subtly says things that don't align with that, right? It's like, well, yeah, healing and freedom is one of my highest priorities. But then in actuality, during the day, you see yourself making other things a priority, right? And your mind might convince you that these other things just have to be done. And that might feel true. But let me tell you what I've seen with earnestness, what it looks like, is that earnestness almost never has to make any excuses for itself. Earnestness is, as I've explained it before, it's a readiness to do the work. It's an openness to do the work. And it's a practice, like an earnest practice of regularly sitting down. Even if you meet resistance, the earnestness meets the resistance. Just sit with that for a second. I've never heard earnestness make an excuse for not inquiring. When someone is earnest, they're not trying to do it for anybody else, first of all. So there would be no reason to make excuses to justify something to themselves or others. They're not in the business of needing to do that, because there's earnestness. So when there's not that high level of earnestness where you're really ready for this, and when there's not that there, that's when the excuses come in, where we try to justify. But look, I just want you to sit there and just hear this for a second. You're sitting on a modality, some of you, and you're resisting it, even though this modality can give you, can provide a really deep freedom and embodiment. Just sit with that for a second. You now have a key, a real key to the end of the deep unconscious suffering in the body. You have that key in your hands right now. Just think about that. I'm sitting here with these keys. What is more important than that in my life? Just look around. If I have these keys that will actually help me open to the pain that's been driving the seeking, the pain and suffering that's been driving, that's in my relationships, that has turned into disease or chronic pain, or that is very uncomfortable every day, the suffering that creates all those triggers in my life, all the upset. I have the keys right now. What am I putting before this? Just take a look at that. What am I deciding that is more important than using these keys today? And is that thing more important? Yeah, in an everyday sense, your mind might say, well, I have to pay this bill. I have to do this. But okay, so there's an example. If I have to, so there's how anxiety is running things right there. So the anxiety about getting your bills paid often is coming from unprocessed stuff from childhood. Some of us downloaded our programs around money from mom and dad, and we're not examining that program. We're just running from it. So given the choice, do I just focus on being anxious around my bills, or do I use these keys, these tools to get to the root of that anxiety, or both? Can I pay my bills and do the inquiry? What I would say, though, is if you're sitting there just doing what you've always done, responding and reacting to life, paying your bills from that same anxiousness, you're missing something here. You're missing that KI helps us with practical living. Like the anxiety that makes it difficult for you to get stuff done, or that makes it feel like the world is sort of falling in on you in any given moment. That is the trauma and repression. We're saying, do you want the freedom in the midst of that, or are you choosing to suffer in some way? Are you arguing in favor of your own suffering by having these tools and choosing instead to put them down and just be anxious about everything, or responding in the same way? See that? It takes a while sometimes, or it takes sometimes somebody to sit here and say this to us, look at what you're doing, before you'll stop and recognize it. It doesn't make any sense, is what I'm saying. When Dan and I were developing the work in the hot tub KI, I'm just trying to think of what it would have been like if one of us would have hopped in the hot tub one night and said, you know what, I don't feel like doing KI today because I need to clean my room. Of course, the room needs to be cleaned sometimes, but immediately Dan and I would have been looking at that because we caught on to resistance and how it works. So we probably said, yeah, let's go clean the room, but do you want to look at that first? But, well, no, because I really want to go clean my room. Okay. But if we were to look at it, it would be like mom and dad conditioning in there. I got it clean because this means this if it's not clean. Just all kinds of like trauma and right there. You see, and we would have caught it because KI catches it. It just would never have happened, basically. We never would have gotten away with it with each other. Because there was earnestness in both of us. If there's not that level of earnestness, here's one of the signs of it, guys. I'll just tell you, this in my view. When that isn't there, that's usually when you start hearing yourself make excuses, even to yourself, or things like, I'm going to get around to inquiring. If you're hearing that, like, I need to inquire, forget it. Because Dan and I always wanted to. We just always wanted to. That's what earnestness is. You just actually want to. Even if there's resistance, you still want to. If you have to fight yourself with it, like if you're starting to turn KI into something that you need to do, I'm dead serious, guys. I don't think that's a good relationship with this work, because it kind of sets it up where it's like you're doing something that is healthy for you, but you don't want to do it. Like going to the gym or changing your diet. I don't feel like that this is a good way to be with this, to treat it like that. Because you'll start to have such a relationship with it where you're not going to want to do it. You see that? Yeah. Are any of you experiencing that, where you have these keys and you're saying to yourself, I really need to get to inquire? Yeah, I want to talk to you guys for a second. That is not my experience at all. And I'm not judging you, but I want to help you. I don't want you to feel like this is some attack. If you do inquire into it, if you feel like this is some kind of attack, that's probably just the self-protection around that. And again, if you're not going to look at that, I can't help you if you keep self-protecting around it. You have to be open to a certain degree to see what's going on. Why is there so much inertia around freedom and healing for you? Why is there so much non-movement and blockage? Unless you're getting something out of your suffering and you're not aware of it yet. There's probably a lot that you're getting out of your suffering. But if you're not aware of it, then your system will make excuses for it. Because you can't say to yourself, I want to suffer, because that doesn't work. You're not that conscious of it, right? So you can't say that to yourself, but that's what's going on some level. We want to suffer. And if we don't become conscious of that level of our experience, then that's going to be driving a lot of it. It's going to create a lot of frustration as you have this relationship with KI, where you actually you want to be free on some level, but unconsciously, the mechanism of repression and trauma has programming that has no interest in it. None. So I think part of the issue with people struggling with KI is they haven't made yet conscious the conditioning that doesn't want to be free, doesn't want to let go of chronic pain, doesn't want to dissolve contraction, doesn't want to let go of repression because it protects you. And but by not being aware of that, so that unconsciously runs, and then the conscious gatekeeping mind. Remember I talked about that? The mind that bamboozles comes up and then starts to lie. Because the real truth of it is more like, I don't want to feel that. I don't want to feel that. I don't want to wake up and be free if it means I have to feel that. That's the truth of our nervous system unconsciously. But if we're not aware of that, we might say from the gatekeeping mind, things like, I just have a lot going on today. I'm in a period now where I just need to take care of this one issue. I don't need to be inquiring, or I got to get stuff in my relationship straight first. Or here's one I've heard: I have to get some health issue in line first before I do inquiry, even though I'm talking for 2 years about how emotional system is tied into the physical. That's how the mind bamboozles. And it's just self-protecting. But if you don't know that, that's the bamboozle, not knowing it. I'm going to do some inquiry with you guys here at the end to show it to you. But it's in not knowing that on some level that you want to suffer, and not knowing that you create more problems for yourself, because you're creating this relationship with KI or any modality, which is driven by a kind of resistance. It can even leave a bad taste in your mouth after a while. And it's like you do the work, but you don't really want to feel something. And as you start to feel that thing, if you don't become more skillful to meet it and move through it, now your system has created that it's almost feeling like now KI is going to traumatize me. It's going to make me feel stuff. This would be all unconscious. This is when this earnestness is not there and you're just self-protecting. So you just start to do KI and that energy starts to come up and the mind that's self-protecting starts to come up. And so then in that state, you find yourself procrastinating more. See? And it's like it compounds itself. Over time now, the system is seeing KI as threatening, but you wouldn't be conscious of it. It would show up as, I'm too busy today. I have other things going on or whatever. It wouldn't show up as that level of consciousness that you're really awake to all this. It's a bamboozle. So I'm just trying to help you see how it shows up, because it'll confuse you. It'll say, it's trying to lie. It's trying to fool you in a way to protect you. It's saying, you need to really pay attention. You've got all these things going on over here. Can you go over there? Go there. There. Get away from this. But it's not conscious. There's no way that your system is going to show you that, though. It's not going to say, you don't want to feel anything. You really do not want to be free. You don't want to be embodied. Stop lying to yourself. You really don't want to feel this stuff. Now go over here and do this, clean your house and get the fuck away from KI. But don't say it to anybody. Don't admit this to yourself or others, because then you might actually have to face it. So keep lying to yourself, in other words. That's how we're hiding it, see? And this is not everybody here. I'm just trying to speak to those people who, because some people, I'll tell you what inspired this, frankly, is I just got a group of trainees. Actually, many of them are kind of younger too, 20s and 30s. They just came in and they learned the tools from me and they just took off. And I don't even see them as much as I see other trainees, because they're seriously doing the work. And whenever they come up to a block, when their mind says things like, well, today I have other things that are important, they know better. And they tend to go look at that. They're afraid to feel something and they know it. So they go into that fear of feeling something. And so that they bring that inquiry into every aspect of life and they're on fire with it. That's earnestness. So when I work with people like that, it helps me shine a light on those that are struggling out there. But I don't do it to judge or blame, but we have to talk about it. You see, we have to, because part of the bamboozling is how we don't talk about that and how we don't get to the bottom of it. And that's just, again, how we're not inquiring sometimes directly enough into our resistance to getting better. And so we might just be assuming that we want to get better, but we don't. On some level, we don't. And so that's what you're seeing in your life, that part of you that sabotages, that's trauma and repression is what it is. You don't want to feel something. It's as simple as that, if you break it down. But it looks like sabotage. And it looks like bamboozle, because your mind will not show it to you. It's protecting you even around your resistance. It doesn't want to show you that you don't want to feel. Because if it showed you that, then you would see that that's the issue. So it's going to bamboozle you. It's going to tell you, shiny nickels, let me go over here. And then the other thing is, see, we're doing the down and dirty work here. So your mind might be drawn to any other modality which provides like peace, light. I don't have to feel this, promises, help. See, you have to look and see all the ways in which you're desperately trying not to feel and how it's taking you in all these different directions. Somebody said, Scott, you don't sugarcoat this. And I appreciate that. I can't. If I sugarcoated this, I would just simply be playing into that whole movement within us to resist and then bamboozle ourselves around it. by sugarcoating it in any way. So one way that I don't want to sugarcoat it is look for, when people start to get to KI, they start to recognize that the core issue is that I don't want to feel something. And so as you become aware of that, then see, if you're not aware of that, if you're not aware that that's kind of running everything, then you're not going to want to feel stuff. You're going to want to go to places and things that make it so that you don't have to feel stuff. See that? If you're not aware of that, if you're aware that that's the conditioning, kind of the core conditioning sort of running everything, then you're not just going to like follow that conditioning and all that it says, you see, because otherwise you're not waking up to it and you're bypassing. It's by not seeing it is how we get away with it. By not seeing that what's really running everything is I don't want to feel this. That unconsciousness is what helps us get into this really complacent, bypassy place. That unconsciousness. Because again, I think once we make that conscious, it's a game changer. Even if we don't like what we see, even if we're like, oh shit, I don't want to feel this. This is what's running everything. Even if it sucks, we're one step ahead of where we were before, because now we can see that's running everything. So here's what I want to say to you all who are just sitting on the fence with KI, or you've gotten it, the tools, but you're not doing it. This may be one of the most important things that I can say to that group of people. Go to sabotage first. Sabotage programming. Okay, but that's misleading too, because the sabotage programming is the repression, suppression trauma. So you can keep it really simple here. I'm going to give you some inquiries at the end, but in terms of context, let's keep it really simple. So part of my context before I was trauma informed was just like this idea that there's this openness. Well, that this isn't running the show. I didn't have consciousness of, I don't want to feel as running the show around anger. So by not being aware of that, I bamboozled myself into thinking that there could be a resting and allowing everything. Like that could actually happen. That can't happen with repression or suppression, because there's strong conditioning that says, I don't want to feel this. So that was one of the first things I had to recognize, is that there's not an allowing of everything, even though it's being pointed to. There can't be when there's programming of I don't want to feel, because whatever that is, we don't want to feel it, and we will not feel it. We'll resist that in a million different ways. And one of the ways is just not to do KI, because then we might have to feel it. Let me just do a little bit of inquiry with you to bring it into experience first, while I put on some makeup. All right. I just want you to feel down into your body, rest as awareness, and imagine that awareness starts from behind the body and mind. And so that the entire body and mind is appearing to awareness, which really just means, yeah, okay, there's an image maybe of the body here. I'm not even talking about that. You might see images of body or mind, but I want you just to notice words and pictures coming and going. Words like a voice in the mind, or images. That's what I mean by mind, just noticing those. And what I mean by body is just feeling and sensation appearing to awareness. And then now letting all of that be exactly as it is, which is just another way of saying rest and be. And then I want you to bring awareness, especially into areas that are tighter or more contracted, because some of us tend to hold energy in certain places. And then I want you just to say this: I want to feel any anger inside me. I want to feel it. And then just listen to the body. I want to feel any anger inside me. Again, if there's any response, so if I say that, there's no response now. There's no, I don't want to feel anger in me. If there's a response in your body, that's the unconscious conditioning right there, even though you can't see it. It says, I don't want to feel that. Any response in the body is that. If it's a small response, that doesn't mean small repression. It could just mean very unconscious, hidden still, running everything though. Now do it with fear. I want to feel any fear in my body. I want to feel it, and see if there's any response to that. Any response in the body is the hidden programming. I don't want to feel that. How do I know that? Because I don't get these responses anymore, but I used to. Next, I want to feel the hurt within me. I want to feel that hurt. I'm open, in other words, to feel that hurt. Any response is that conditioning. Now think about it. You've stored that energy and you've stored the conditioning with it. See? So anytime you get close to that emotion, that conditioning kicks in, but it doesn't show itself to you. You get a response. It doesn't show you the mind part often. Sometimes it does. And then here's another one. I want to feel this shame. I want to feel shame. Feel and allow it. If you consult your mind, your spiritual mind might tell you, yeah, I want to feel everything. But your unconscious mind, the body, has a different agenda, and you want to be tuned into that. Okay. So what you know now, if you didn't know it before, is that you have conditioning. Again, whether you're directly aware of it or not, you felt it, that I don't want to feel something. Well, you're way ahead of the game than where I was 15 years ago. Because if somebody would have said that to me, that there's conditioning at the core of everything that says, I don't want to feel, what I would have said was like, yeah, right. That makes sense. Yeah, that's the ego. Full of shit, Scott. Because to really be conscious of that is to truly, truly see how it's operating in life, in reaction and response, and then to embody that seeing so that it's so conscious that the energy of the repression dissolves. So for me to say something like lip service, yeah, I don't want to feel as a core ego programming. That is just the mind agreeing. For what reason, I don't know. So if you sat here in the beginning and said, yeah, I know that I don't want to feel is at the core of experience. If you really knew that, you wouldn't have repression and trauma. If you really knew it, you would see it. You would see it in awareness instead of letting it be unconscious all the time. See, so knowing that it's there or having seen it as something arising every now and then is not what I'm talking about. And this is how we bamboozle ourselves, is by saying things like that. Like, yeah, I know that it's being run. No, you don't. To know it intellectually is not enough. To see it in real time is the transformation, to make it conscious. If you don't, if you just say to yourself, I know that, and you hold it here, but it's not in direct experience, then that conditioning is going to continue running everything. It doesn't do you any good to sit here and say, I know that, or I've seen that, or something, when it's actually presently running things. That's what I'm talking about, how it presently runs things. That's the seeing. That's the transformation. And so then what does it take to see that? It takes to be able to sit down and do KI first for a while to be able to make that conscious. So for those of you struggling with KI, keep it simple. You have programming that says you don't want to feel something, and your system is trying to keep you from seeing that programming and feeling that emotion. And that's all that's going on, really. Everything else is a bamboozle, if you think about it. Everything else that says, I don't have time for it, or this, or I mean, I've even reduced the price of $30 a month. So is money an obstacle now? Like, you want me to give away for free? I get that. But if we reduce the barriers and the obstacles to this on our side, make it really accessible, what's left on your side that's keeping you from doing it? And this is it. It's the I don't want to feel. And so I'm going to give you some inquiries here in a moment to help move through that sabotaging conditioning. Just one second here. Okay, so here's your first inquiry is, see, the thing is we don't know whether KI will work for you, right? Simply because we can't predict the future. There's a lot of factors that go into whether KI will help you or work for you. One of them is KI a skillful practice? You have to come and find out by doing it. The other one is, am I ready for that practice? Do I have the earnestness for it? Is there something that I'm still self-protecting around that is so strong that I'll protect that much more than I'll go into the inquiry that brings the freedom and the healing? And so we don't know whether KI will work. But sabotage is kind of like where the mind has already decided something. And then so you're living from within that programming that says, this will never work. I'll never heal, all that. So I want you to feel down into your body and then just say, KI will work for me. And then just feel anything that responds as if to say no. Because remember, we don't know the future. So your mind is trying to predict the future to protect you. It's like saying it won't work. Some of you, but it might just be an energy. So if it's just energy, feel into that and ask, what would this energy say if it had a voice? So KI will work for me. Now watch the thoughts and the energy with them. But if there's no thoughts with that energy, say, what would the energy say if it had a voice? I want you to allow everything that says KI won't work. Allow it all fully in awareness. KI will work for me. Just continue to allow anything that says no or that questions that, because that's that programming of protection. Even though it doesn't look like it, just stay with it all. KI will work for me. If there's any energy that feels stuck, remember, ask, what does this energy have to say here? So you can see the mind and body connection around this sabotage. Welcome every thought and stay with every thought until it dissolves back into awareness. KI will work for me. Just give you another 30 seconds or a minute to keep going with this. KI will work for me. Allow it all. Okay, let me talk to you for a second here. So, where does that come from? This energy, if you have it, that says KI won't work for me. It's not what it appears. Your system doesn't really know what KI is until you do it. But what it does know is it doesn't want to feel certain things. So it produces thoughts like KI won't work, or I'm different, my suffering is unique, or something like that, as a way to bamboozle you from seeing that the core issue is that I don't want to feel something. That's the core. Now, how do we make that conscious? Because if that's running, the KI won't work, or the sabotaging programs. Let me just say this: the I don't want to feel is running a lot of shit in life, including the sabotaging that we're experiencing in different ways. I won't go into that, but repression creates the false identity, and the false identity is what's sabotaging everything. The false identity also has a repression in it. See, so by sabotaging, you don't have to feel that repression. If that doesn't make sense, just come into the members area and do the work, because you can't explain the unconscious to you. You have to see it. So the KI will not work, or those questioning thoughts that are like, I don't know if it'll work, is part of it. Again, is repression. Is I don't want to feel. Let me show you. I want you to bring awareness into a particular area where you hold energy. Just rest and allow that area for a moment. Exactly as it is. Just rest, allow. Let it be as it is. And then just say this several times while feeling into the sensation. Again, I want to feel this. I want to feel this. Whatever it is, I want to feel this. When you reverse repression, there's no response there, because the programming has been seen through. So if you're feeling any response, and if it's a small response, it doesn't mean a small repression. That's the mind saying things it's trying to protect itself. Small just means you're aware of it. It could mean small. It could mean that you're just seeing the tip of the iceberg and it's really buried. Any response in the body is evidence of the conditioning I don't want to feel. So basically, if that's there, that's going to be running the bypassing, the sabotaging, the statements where like, I don't feel like doing KI today, or I have too much going on. It's running that. So you can see that not being aware of it would be the bamboozle. And not being aware of it is how we get away with saying things that really aren't the truth. In other words, we might say, I have this going on, I have that going on. We may have those things going on, but if below that, if the real truth of our experience below all that is, I don't want to feel the anger, I don't want to feel the grief, that's what we really ought to be paying attention to, right? Because otherwise we're going to leave KI and do the same thing in the next teaching. See, the next teaching, our conditioning will meet that, the next practice. And we might be gung-ho in the beginning, like, this is the answer. This teaching, this practice. KI wasn't. It was close, but but this next one. And then, you start to learn it, and now you have those keys. You've got them, just like you had KI. And after a while, just like with KI, you end up not doing it, or kind of giving up, or slowing down, getting scared. And so then the same thing happens. And so I'm trying to help you, not just with KI, but to the next modality where you do it. At some point, will you turn towards the condition that says, I don't want to feel, and then start making that conscious? That's what we do in third dimension work. And that is the repression. See why I'm saying that resistance is synonymous with repression? Because many people would say, well, I don't want to feel, that's resistance. Right. But that's also the mechanism of repression. That's its conditioning. I don't want to feel this. I don't want to express this. I can't feel this. It's not safe. I can't express that. So if you're wondering whether KI is effective modality, you're looking at the fact that it is, because I used to have this very strong conditioning. Like, I don't want to feel the fear of putting on makeup or being my more girly self. There's your evidence that it works. But that doesn't help you if you have strong conditioning that says, I don't want to feel. I'm just trying to show you that if you move through the resistance, it's very powerful work, but it's the resistance that's going to get some of you. And what that really means is that for some of you, you will not take those extra measures to make conscious your conditioning that says, I don't want to feel this. I don't want to feel that. And by not taking that extra measure, you just continue to bamboozle yourself. See, that's what I did with anger through the years, is I just wouldn't take those extra measures to make conscious the conditioning that says, I don't want to feel that. So then that turned into chronic pain. So you have additional keys today. We've given you KI as the key, as one of the keys for trauma and repression and real suffering. But now I've given you another key. I've given you the key to unlock your sabotage. If you will sit with these inquiries for a week and see your resistance. So the inquiries are, one of them is, KI will work for me. And by the way, if you see yourself not wanting to do that inquiry, can you see how the I don't want to feel something is even running that? And then at least you have that insight if you're not able to do this inquiry this week. Or some of you will do it for like a day or so, and then you'll stop. And you might tell yourself, okay, I've seen that. I get that that's there, but that's part of the bamboozle because the conditioning is still there. And so you gave up on the inquiry. So it continues to run things. And then you might come to me and you'll say, oh, I looked at that. No, you didn't. You just had a glimpse of it. To really see something is to start making it conscious and stay with that practice to really, really see how it's running everything. To do it for a day and just have a glimpse of it and come back and say, you've seen that, is part of the bamboozling. See that? That conditioning is not going to go away just because you took a look at it, or you're not going to see through it or see it for what it is just by click, because it's very powerful. It's ongoing. And that's your resistance. Some of you will pick this up though, and you'll actually follow through with it. You'll say for several days, you'll go to that inquiry, KI will work for me. And the inquiry, I want to feel this sensation or this pain. You'll go into it because you're going to start seeing there's a lot of mind-body connection around not wanting to feel that and not wanting to get better. And then once you see that, that's so important. It's so critical to see that, because now you know the real view, the right view is that although you seek freedom on some level, your desire for safety is keeping you from the freedom or the healing. And that's a good perspective to have since it's already happening. It's reality-based in that way. And it's good to always have a framework that's reality-based so that we don't bamboozle ourselves. By saying things like, I don't have time today. Wait, you don't have time to, you don't have time to discover the deepest freedom? You don't have time to heal, to put a few minutes of your day into healing and getting better? You don't have time for that. But notice how your system always has time for, I don't want to feel this. I don't want to feel that. You really do have to sit down for a while and see this. Or pretty much what KI is going to be for quite a few people will be, they come, they get really excited about it because it's really good work. And then the I don't want to feel takes over. And within a few weeks or months, now you're just back into the bypassing and maybe even slowly tuning me out. Or just now listening to me as like entertainment at this point. Like I've kind of given up on the idea that I'm going to actually do KI regularly, but I still like listening to Scott. Totally fine. I'm not saying go away, but I'm just trying to show you that I see the patterns of resistance out there. And I don't know if you're recognizing it as resistance. I'm just trying to help with that. Yeah. What do you do if you discover this deep conditioning of, I don't want to feel? God, that's like where the rubber meets the road, you guys. Like if you discover that, in my view, that's a crossroads right there. If you go down the road that makes that conscious, that's embodiment. That can be healing. That's what the healing was for me. But if you find this and you simply just go asleep to it, then that to me is bypassing right there. You take that road, and that's a painful road. I'm telling you, even though it's temporarily feels better or more peaceful because I don't have to feel that, in the end, it's welcoming more suffering down the road. And I didn't understand that. I didn't understand how bad the suffering could get, but the chronic pain was bad. I don't want to make anybody feel bad around this. I just want to invite you now to see the crossroads. It's really critical to see this, guys. I'm being serious when I say this. When you discover the repression conditioning, it's like you have a choice. You now know that this is powerful conditioning sabotaging your life. Well, if it's sabotaging KI, it's sabotaging other things. So you know that now, and you know the culprit. See, before, when you're unconscious to the culprit, we can get away with it, right? Excuse my blush. We can get away with saying like, I'm too busy, or because we're not conscious of the I don't want to feel language yet. But once you're conscious of it, the question is, what will you do? So I'll just tell you, that's a core program of the ego, very, very core, run by fear. So you're not going to get much more core than that on your ego. That's it. So basically the crossroads is either I make that conscious now for the embodiment and the healing and a deeper recognition of presence, or I just turn away from that inquiry and let that conditioning of I don't want to feel stay unconscious, and it's just going to run the show. That's so important to hear, isn't it? Because some of you are probably at that crossroads right now. All I'm going to say is if you're at the crossroads and you find yourself erring on the side of procrastination and resistance, if you haven't already, come to the members area and bring that up. There's lots of material on sabotage. We do meetings on it, and there's more support there for you. But just come and bring it up. It's a topic that we constantly talk about, though, because you're probably going to need that support. Again, left to your own devices at home, think about it. You're already your system already wants to seek safety and doesn't want to feel something, and it's keeping it very unconscious for you. It's only when I get on YouTube, perhaps, that I show it to you or you see it, the I don't want to feel, and then I go away. And so with unconsciousness, when there's not somebody around you kind of pointing to it, it's just easy to kind of fall right back asleep in it. And then if you're not in the members area, again, there's nobody around you. You see that? And it just, that's how it all happens. Even if you come to the members area, uh, you can still resist and sabotage, because it's mostly about, are you making that conscious? You could be doing a lot of work, but still not making that conscious and still sabotaging yourself. So my invitation is, for the next week, if you found this strong procrastination, resistance, sabotage energy, is every day do those 2 inquiries. KI will work. Observe everything. Feel everything that's with every thought. And go into a certain contraction and say, I want to feel this. And for that, that's repression. So many of you, what I would do with that is I would slow every thought down that says, I don't want to feel it. And there's going to be a lot of them. Just continue witnessing them, because it's a programming. And if you don't witness it, that programming is stuck in there. But as you start to witness it, it starts to loosen up the energy, because you're seeing the mind-body connection that says, I don't want to feel it. But what that really does then is it prepares you for our 3rd dimension work, rapid fire, so that we can transmute that energy more skillfully. Right now, I'm asking you to establish that mind-body connection first before you get into 3rd dimension. I want you to see how the energy in your body is connected to this programming. I don't want to feel that. Make that conscious so that I can show you the 3rd dimension work. If you'll do this work, this inquiry, these 2 inquiries for the next week or so, chances are you're going to be much more open to KI. Your whole practice is likely to change at that point. But again, if you give up on this inquiry in like a day or so, or a couple of days, unless you're just going to give up on KI, that right there is a moment in which I would definitely do sessions, or come to the members area and talk to somebody, because the sabotage inquiries that I just gave you are the saving grace for some people. Like with those inquiries, they can finally get under the resistance and start working with it. But if there's resistance to doing that, you may need to bring yourself into the company of someone who can help you see what is exactly going on, because left to your own experience, you're just so self-protecting that KI is not going to be the modality for you. But what I say is, before you leave, it could just be a skill issue. So get with somebody. A lot of resistance gets taken care of with skill. See, once I had more effective skills, the readiness level went up, because it's like, this works. It works. So once I would do it, I would see that it works, and it builds up the readiness for that. So if you could just get with somebody that will help you with skill, and you start to see how it works, I think that also helps your resistance decrease. Hope this helps, guys.